honor to be with you all here in this session and to share with you what a phenomenal opportunity, right? To go ahead and be involved with something so special. Microsoft and Q coming together. This is a game changer. And of course, I'll be mentioning this throughout the session. Of course, I'll be checking on the chat as well. That we have q.org/Microsoft. Thank you again to Q and Microsoft for coming together. So you guys are probably wondering, you say, Vernon, we're here for this 5 R's, right? The 5 R's. What are those? The 5 R's. Real, relevant, rigorous, reflective, and refined. If you have something to take notes with, great. If you do not, here's what I would advise. I would advise that you go ahead and take a moment, whether that's high tech or low tech or anywhere in between, to go ahead and prepare to take some copious notes. Certainly, I do hope that what I'm getting ready to share with you is of value. All right. So this moment in history for our nation and world, I want to go ahead and say this just real briefly and quickly, right? We are in a unique time in our world. And I want to go ahead and really just give thanks to Microsoft, EDU, and Q for coming together, to really go ahead and live out this commitment to equity and to developing educators literally worldwide. How many of you know that when Microsoft and Q come together, this is not something that we're doing just locally. We're doing this literally across the globe. So thank you again, Microsoft, EDU, and Q for coming together. Absolute genius. We love it, right? So the 5 R's. Okay. All right. So there I am, Vernon Wright. If you are on Twitter, you can follow me at The Right Leader, as it says there. And of course, as we share and exchange ideas, go ahead and, of course, connect with me on Twitter. How many of you know that one of the great things about Twitter is even when we get through with professional development or with a session, the learning still continues. And so that's what I want to go ahead and do with you all here today. And my hope and my desire, right? Let me just go ahead and share that with you and be very authentic and vulnerable with you up front, right? My hope and my desire is that of what I am sharing with you today, that it is of great value to your practices, not only professionally, but maybe that there are some things within what I'm sharing with you today that you'll say, you know what, Vernon, this is great. This helps me not only in this realm professionally, there are also some things that I think are helping me or can help me in my personal life. So we love that, right? All right. So real, relevant, rigorous, reflective, and refined. Which of these do you think is the most important for effective instruction? If you would, in the chat real quick, if you would go ahead and type in which of those do you think is the most important for effective instruction? Real, relevant, rigorous, reflective, or refined. All right, we got somebody that says reflective. Somebody that says reflective there. Again, which of these, real, I see real there. Very, very good. Which of these do you think is the most important for effective instruction? Real, relevant, rigorous, reflective, or refined. We've got some relevant in there. That's good. We have some real. We have somebody that says all equal. Going to go ahead and give you about 10 more seconds here to go ahead and just kind of think about that. This kind of reminds me of years ago when I was introduced to Avid and the learning structure of philosophical chairs. Some of the answers that have been given by some of the participants may sway your opinion, right? So we'll see. So here's really the answer to it. There really is no particular one that is the most important or is more important than any of the others. It's really all of them, right? All of them are important. So you say, Vernon, give us some context to that, some background. I'm so glad that you were thinking about that. That is what we're going to do here with the 5R's. So let's go ahead and let's look at a guiding question, right? I again, in years of working with Avid, one of the things that I really liked about Avid are essential questions, guiding questions, and really just questioning in general as a former campus administrator is really just looking at the power of questioning, right? And how questions can do just that. They can guide our thinking and put us on a path. So let's go ahead and take a look at it today. It says, how can we use innovation and empowerment in our roles to advance student achievement? Now, this is not something that You have to answer in the chat. If you'd like to take a moment or two to go ahead and answer that, certainly you can. That's fine. That's great. But really, the guiding question is something for you to just think about as we go through the session today. How can we use innovation and empowerment in our roles to advance student achievement? How many of you know that term empowerment is pretty strong, right? It's pretty strong. All right. So, what are some of the Microsoft apps that are your favorites that enhance your daily endeavors? If you would, in the chat, real quick, just type in what some of the apps are, the Microsoft apps that you say, you know what, Vernon, man, these are my go to apps. Like, these are the things that are really important to me. If you would just go ahead and type that in there in the chat, real quick. What are some of the apps that you say, you know what, Vernon, man, I am just so thankful that Microsoft has created these because these are my go-to apps. I just couldn't do a day of instruction a day professionally, even personally, without having these apps. So we see Word and PowerPoint, great. Forms, yeah, that's a sleeper. A lot of people do not know about Microsoft Forms, so I'm glad that somebody mentioned that. Immersive Reader. Let me tell you right now, folks, if you're working with students that have and are special needs, Immersive Reader is something you need to get connected to immediately. Immersive Reader, very, very, very good one. Office 365, OneDrive. Yeah, one of the things that's great about OneDrive that a lot of folks don't understand is, and really the whole Office 365 suite, it is really genius in the way that it's designed because it updates on all of your devices, right? So I know I was talking with a colleague the other day, a leadership colleague, and they were mentioning to me that they were getting ready to go to a conference or go to some type of meeting, and they forgot their main laptop. But folks that do speaking, and you may do this as well, you always carry a backup laptop, right? And so they had their backup laptop, so they had all of their files because everything was synced online. Yes, autosave. Lisa says autosave. Yes, we love the autosave. Great when the power goes out. How about that one? How many of you remember years ago we used to have that thing where you would be working on something and the power would go out, or you would have some issues and you would be like, wow, where did all of my work go, right? So there you see, which is what we're on right now, Microsoft Teams. Nothing can stop a team. Great application, Microsoft Teams. And I encourage you guys to really keep an eye out for Microsoft Teams because one of the things that's really interesting about it, and it's really not the core of what we're talking about here, but definitely have to give a shout out to Microsoft for it. Microsoft is continuing to develop Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is something that, as you see it now, it's getting better and better day by day. All right. So what are some of the ones you say, Vernon, that you like? I will share with you very personally. One of the ones I like is Microsoft To Do. Some of you may not know about that. Great application. Syncs, of course. Great deal. So the next one is one that might catch you by surprise. If you are a person that is an educational consultant, if you do a lot of consultant work, or even if you're someone that tracks expenses or other things of that nature for other reasons, how about this one right here, Mile IQ? How many of you knew that Mile IQ was part of Microsoft? You may not have known that one. So, of course, as you see there, it says Microsoft 365 for Business. So if Mile IQ is something that you had before and you say, well, Vernon, it's been a while since I've really kind of looked at Mile IQ. Mile IQ is part of the Microsoft family. That is one that I like as well. So we've looked at a little bit about these Microsoft apps and talked about a few things. What about the 5 R's, right? Real, relevant, rigorous, reflective, and refined. What about the 5 R's? All right, so we'll get to that here in a second. Who is Vernon Wright, right? That guy that's right there in the bow tie and everything there. So founder of ZeroApologyZone.com. Very grateful to have that outlet to go ahead and create an apparel line that helps to go ahead and put forth a very positive message to uplift not only adults, but youth as well. Entrepreneur, speaker, consultant, leader, performance coach. Work with a lot of clients privately, working with them to go ahead and see how they can be the best, not only in their professional lives, but their personal lives as well. So immensely grateful for all the opportunities. Really, folks, I'm going to tell you, and I want to get ahead of myself, right? But really, it's about making a connection and really having an impact and really figuring out and thinking about how can we reach as many people as possible. And that's one of the reasons why this Microsoft and Q coming together in venture is so important, because we're reaching people literally across the globe. So 3 high impact levers for teaching and leadership, right? Let's go ahead and let's take a look at them right here. This is where, if you haven't been taking notes, you'll definitely want to be ready, right? Number one is competence. How many of you know that competence is important, right? You don't have to know everything, but you do have to know some things, right? 3 high impact levers for teaching and leadership. Number two, communication. How many of you know that having different ways of communicating is absolutely important as well? There is also, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, well versed in, there's also this concept called nonverbal communication. That's important as well. So number three is connection. And I have to tell you that of all of the three, this is the one that I have seen in the years that I have been in this business in a variety of roles, that I have seen that's been the one that really has made the biggest difference out of all three of them, because it's connection that really brings us together. And that one's important. So there's a whole lot more I could say about that one, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, right? So let's look at the same 3 high impact levers, but let's do it with the twist this time, right? Let's do it with the twist. So connection, right? Connection, impact. So we connect with people in an authentic way. We make an impact. So you might ask me, Vernon, what does impact mean, right? People ask me that from time to time. What is impact? Because people will come to me sometimes, they'll say, Vernon, I want to make an impact, right? And one of the things that I say to them simply is this: a very quick 10-second, 20-second litmus test is this. When we talk about impact and we talk about adding value, it really is this: whatever it is you're sharing or contributing, does it advance whatever that person's trying to do? Whatever goal they're trying to accomplish, whatever their end result is that they're desiring. When we have an impact, a profoundly positive impact with people, what we're doing and contributing of our resources, and whatever those resources are, it's advancing what they're trying to do and helps them to achieve that end result. So that's impact, connection, and impact. Let's see what number three is. Number three is scale. And I mentioned this or alluded to this just a few moments ago. Once you have that ability to connect with people and you have that opportunity to make an impact, right? We love making an impact with people. We love to know that what we're sharing and what we're doing is really making a difference, right? Then what's the next thing? The next thing is this: how can we go ahead and reach as many people as possible so that they can experience those same things? That is scale. Those of you that have been in leadership positions, or you're veteran educators, and let's say maybe you have been at different campuses during your career, you may have even been at campuses, which I've been very grateful to have been, blessed to have been at some campuses where we have helped to turn those campuses around. I did that at one campus as a teacher, was part of the team there, teacher leader. Campus administrator at another campus, where we helped to turn the campus around. And how many of you know that when your district and senior leadership see that, what's their first question? How can we replicate that, right? So that all of our schools can be at that high performing level. And that's scale, really. They may not necessarily call it scale. That's more of a business term, but that's really it, which is scales. So connection, impact, and scale. I will tell you this right now, right? Let me go ahead and kind of give you guys a little tip here. If you've kind of been wondering, Vernon, I'm kind of at a crossroads in my career and I'm thinking about what's next, and I'm just kind of evaluating where I am. Think about these 3 areas. What connection are you making with individuals? Is it an authentic connection? Is it a connection that's sustained? Are you truly making impact? And again, we talked about impact and adding value and what that means. And then third, and this will really resonate with you if this applies to you in your career, we're talking about scale. So when do we really at this point decide, hey, I need to go ahead and see how I can reach as many people as possible with this? That's really the next step for me. So connection, impact, and scale, right? All right. So big question. What does real mean within the context of our learning today? Now, I don't want you to answer in the chat right now this second, But I just want you to think about that, right? It's kind of like a mini guiding question. What does real mean within the context of our learning today? All right. So the power of authenticity or being real, right? We had some folks that said, they believe that this one was the most important one. And I will tell you that authenticity is absolutely essential. And that's the reason why I have listed it as the first one, because of my years in the business and across various roles. I have seen authenticity bring people together despite differences, despite different cultural backgrounds, despite maybe different backgrounds in terms of what they have experienced in life, right? Being real or authentic is absolutely crucial. And if we're not able to do that, guess what happens? And this is what we don't want to have happen, right? Number one, we don't want to have people see us as not being authentic. And if we're not authentic, which means what? We're not really making connections with people, then guess what else happens? We might not really see the true value that person holds. Let me say that one again. If we're not real, we might not be seeing the true value that person has within them, right? And that's our ability to be real and really see the situation for what it is. So the power of authenticity. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here. When is a time that being authentic helped you to connect with students and or colleagues? So if you would in the chat, just go ahead and type in real quick. When is a time that being authentic, it helped you to connect with students or with colleagues? Lisa says relevant for our learners. Love that. That is absolutely on point. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Patsy, for that affirmation there on the slides. Very, very good. The power of authenticity. When is a time that being authentic help you to connect with students or with colleagues? I will tell you just a quick story as you guys are kind of thinking about, kind of what is a response that you feel really speaks to your heart. Many, many, many moons ago, when I got started as an educator and I was going through my formal training, right? I remember at the end of that formal training, we had our senior instructor, and she said to us, she said, one of the most important things you can do, especially if you're going to be a secondary teacher and teaching the upper grades, is really think about and be connected with the things that are popular in students' lives, because it allows your interest in those things and knowledge of those things to connect with students, and students see, okay, you know what, you're a real person, right? If you're a teacher, how many of you have seen a student at the grocery store or at the mall, and students were very surprised to know that you didn't live at the school, right? You're an actual human being beyond that. So that's the authenticity and the realness there, right? Sharing struggles with resilience and trying new things, being honest helps. Absolutely true, Patsy. And, students, a lot of times we kind of wonder, we say, well, do they really think that we're kind of telling them the truth, or are they really in tune with that? Absolutely, students are in tune with that. And so a lot of times students aren't waiting to see if we're all on the same page. They're waiting to really see, are the adults going to tell me what I think the situation really is? In other words, are they going to be real with me in a professional way, right? So that one is very, very key. James says staff development, looking at making school improvement. Absolutely, that is true. That is absolutely true. And I remember that many years ago, a friend of mine, she was an assistant principal at the time. I was in administration as well. And she came to me one time and said, Mr. Wright, she asked me a question. She said, what do you think we should be doing for staff development? And I gave her some ideas that were unorthodox ideas, right? But what did they do? They spoke to what the staff really could use to propel themselves for the next school year over the summer. And so if I had just told her what maybe a lot of other people thought was just kind of the normal, quote unquote, normal professional development, we may have missed that moment as a faculty. And that was a pivotal moment there. Let's see. I believe that is Marcy. Marcy, I believe. Marcy. Admitting my mistakes makes me a real person. Absolutely. How many of you know that when you're working with students and students see that you make mistakes, how many of you have ever said, when you've made a mistake, you looked at students? I used to do this when I was in the classroom, right? And you looked at students and said, hey, I was just checking to see if you were paying attention, right? How many of you pull that one? I've done that one away. I've done that one as well. But yes, when you're authentic with them and you share with them and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I missed that, right? It's a great lesson because it shows them that even if you make a mistake, there's a comeback on the other side of that. Even if you make a mistake, there's a comeback on the other side of that. And I believe someone else in here mentioned resilience. Patsy mentioned that. That's really kind of the story of resilience, right? Is maybe something didn't go the way that you intended it to go, or maybe what you thought the path was going to be. But on the opposite side of that, there's what? There's a victory that's waiting. Let's see what James says. Students that think that we are perfect and are often shocked when we do make a mistake. Sometimes they do, right? They're shocked by that. But again, what is the real time lesson, right? The real time life lesson is, and it's not necessarily anything that's a huge thing. It might just be a small thing, right? Just a small mistake. Um, is so important because guess what happens? What happens is we're able to tell them, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we're able to talk to them about how do I assess that in real time and how do I make course corrections. I had a mentor share that with me many, many, many years ago before I went to graduate school about how do you assess things in real time and make changes and course corrections. And one of the things that he shared with me, and I share it with you all here, is he asked me, he said, have you ever been on an airplane? And I said, yes, I have. And he asked me, he said, are there times, especially on longer flights, where the airplane has to, and the pilot has to go ahead and make slight changes in the bearings and the direction of the airplane? And I said, absolutely so. And he said, the same is true with people and individuals. So as they're going through life, sometimes you make a little minor change here, minor change there. He might be at a bearing of 300 degrees and might go to 295 degrees, right? Or he might go from 300 degrees to 90 degrees. So yes, great, great, great lessons there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go to the next one. So what does relevant mean within the context of our learning? Again, uh, just kind of think about this. Don't necessarily answer in the chat right now, but what does relevant mean, right? People talk about, you need to be relevant. So really it's about connecting the learning and our experiences with others and our lives. And this is just the richness, right? The richness of being in education and connecting with individuals and connecting with students and our colleagues, right? And I will tell you that some of the greatest moments in my career, right? Just stellar moments as a teacher leader, part of a campus administration team, part of district level support. Some of the greatest moments with educators and with students have been when we got to share of our life's experiences and talk about how that shaped not only our learning then, but how it shaped our learning in real time as we were having the dialogue. So my being able to understand not only what the learning is for whatever that lesson is, but really understanding how does it pertain to that student in their life. I will never forget, I was doing a classroom observation one time years ago, and the teacher was teaching a lesson over financial literacy. And how many of you know that financial literacy is an important thing, right? And so the teacher was talking about different types and different ways to finance an automobile. And the teacher finished the lesson. The students, of course, vibrant discussion, which is one of the things I really love to see and have enjoyed seeing over the years whenever I've been in a classroom, is just this vibrant discussion between students and teachers. And it's really that point where the discussion and the dialogue becomes this community, right? That's that real feeling of community. And the student said, oh, okay, well, now I understand how people buy cars. I really didn't understand that. So here was a student that saw people driving cars, right? Saw their parents driving cars, saw teachers and other people at the school driving cars, but they really didn't understand the process of how do you go down to a car dealership and buy a car, right? And that was powerful for them because it related to what they thought before, and it really, to use a term, it leveled up or it advanced their knowledge, right? So the power of relevancy. How do we connect with people and have those rich dialogues? So, when is the time that being relevant helped you to connect with your students or with your colleagues? Now, if you will go ahead and type that in the chat, when is the time that being relevant helped you to connect with your students or with colleagues? When is the time that it helped you to connect with them? And some of you have alluded to this already. I will tell you, and I've alluded to it a little bit under authenticity and being real, right? I will never forget, I was at a campus one day, and I was waiting to speak with an administrator about some different things. And I was sitting next to a student, and the student was in the office for whatever the reason was, and it wasn't anything bad. And so the student and I were sitting next to each other, and I could see that the student had, their phone, and they were listening to some music, right? And so started having a conversation, asked the student, "What are you listening to?" And what the student was listening to is some of the music that I listen to. And I was like, wow, this is great. So really that relevancy and understanding, really this allows us to have that connection that bridges those gaps in ages and generations. It's just wonderful. Lisa says here, having grad students use tech tools for assignments that they can use in their own ECE classrooms. That's a good one as well. And one of the things that, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Thank you so much, Lisa. As we talk about as education develops, right, and it's this ongoing development and it's evolving, one of the things that maybe we don't have at the forefront of our thinking as much sometimes is how can we go ahead and reach the next generation of educators that are preparing to go into the business or they're new to the profession, right? How do we reach them? How do we help them develop? And it's by aligning some of the practices that we're doing with what they're doing. And that's great. Great point. James says here, yes, indeed. Let me go ahead and get over here to the chat on my device here. On just a second. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Interesting. Rich dialogue. Rich dialogue. Rich dialogue there, James. Now, how many of you know that, and I'm going to make a presumption here, James, right? And because I was not there, but while you were having that discussion and talking to students, how many times did you have to tell any of the students to pay attention, right? Probably zero, because it was so engaging, so engaging. We have a lot of folks to talk about, and I've had people, share with me over the years, Mr. Wright, Vernon, talk to me about how can I get students engaged in class, right? And this context is really not about student engagement, but I do want to go ahead and talk about it. And it's really important what James shared there, because that power of relevancy, that brings people into your story, right? See, curriculum can't do that. A textbook can't do that. Textbooks are great, physical and digital. Everything is really going towards digital. So digital resources are awesome. Digital resources are great. There are other learning tools that are great, but what cannot be replaced is that connection between human beings and another human being saying to another human being, come into my story. Let me share with you my experiences, right? It's really powerful. Yeah. So the next time somebody talks to you about student engagement, I'll give you a little tip here, right? From my days of being a campus administrator and being part of campus leadership, I'll give you a little tip. One of the things is, how rich is the dialogue? How rich is the story that's being told? And however rich the story is that's being told, that's probably going to be a pretty significant indicator as to whether a predictor as to whether the student engagement levels are going to be high or maybe not as high as someone would desire. So let's go ahead and go on. You guys are phenomenal. You guys are great. Just love being here in this session with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. What does rigorous mean? Wow, that's a big one, right? Rigorous, right? So be thinking about that one, rigorous. What does rigorous mean? What does rigorous mean? All right, so the power of rigor. Now, there's a lot that I've put there on that slide, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of bring it down to the Vernon Wright translation, right? And you see there, I use the word essence. I love to use the word essence. I just sometimes like to say essence, right? Because essence really points to what? It points to what the core being is of something, what the core understanding or concept is of something. And really, I will tell you a quick little story. I was visiting with an administrator one day. This has been years ago, right? Someone that's a good friend of mine. And we were sitting down and we were talking about some things, curriculum and instruction wise. And I mentioned the word rigorous. And he turned and looked at me and he said, Mr. Wright, he said, what's rigorous to you may not necessarily be rigorous to me. And we had this really great debate around what quote unquote rigor meant, right? Because there are a lot of different people that are in a lot of different spaces about what rigor means. But I will tell you what I have come to really adopt over the years and has worked really well for me when we talk about rigor, quote unquote rigor, and whether something is quote unquote rigorous really is this. Does it challenge students' thinking? And does it inspire them to want to go ahead and learn more and see more and to investigate more and to research more? And does it really develop the passion? And let me go ahead and say this to you real quick again, just kind of a little quick tip, because this is really not the intent or scope of this sharing. But I will tell you this right now. When somebody tells you that something is rigorous when it pertains to learning, one of the first things you should ask yourself is, if something is rigorous, have students demonstrated a passion for learning and knowing more? And I'm going to say that again. If something is rigorous, have they developed a passion for wanting to know more and researching more and wanting to acquire more knowledge, and not just knowledge, but really understanding and context around whatever that thing is? So we have a lot of people talking about what's rigorous, but if the learning is not challenged, if their thoughts are not challenged, that they entered into the lesson with, and they don't have that passion for learning more and wanting to know more and do more, then I would question whether whatever that activity is quote unquote rigorous, right? Yeah, let me go ahead and check on the chat here because there's some great things. Yes, indeed. Some of my favorite moments were outside the curriculum discussing read alouds. Yes. Roll tires or ride bikes. Love that. How many of you know that learning doesn't happen just inside of a classroom? Learning happens literally on this thing called the earth. This is phenomenal. I love that. I would agree that it is the unintentional learning that is probably what kids will remember the most. Absolutely. Because let me tell you something, and obviously I'm not a neurologist, but when we activate a passion for learning, something happens chemically, neurologically. And when that happens, we trigger those mechanisms within the brain that are responsible and connected with developing and creating memories. So if we're really not really cultivating and nurturing and causing kids and positioning learning experiences where kids can develop a passion for that learning, the question really, one of the many questions is this: what's going to be the permanence of that learning? Is it really going to make an impact? And I've had teachers over the years, come up to me and ask me, hey, Mr. Ray, what do you think I can do really to elevate and take my teaching to the next level? And I will tell you, one of the things that I've told them is simply this. My good friend Dave Burgess says, he talks about, creating experiences. And I say it this way, giving a nod to Dave. I say it this way: create memories. Create memories. And I will tell you this: if you've been thinking about, as you get ready to go into the next school year, after the summer is over, what are some things that I can do to really elevate and really game change my instruction? And it's really to think about this, because we can get really deep into all of the details, right? I had a golf coach really tell me about that one time many years ago. He said, you're thinking too much. Just get up there and swing, right? And I was like, well, coach. And he said, no, just Vernon, get up there. We've gone over all the basics. Get up there and swing, right? And so we have to go ahead and make those memories, right? Because we can get inundated with the details. But if we make memories, I'm telling you, how many of you know, and how many of you have experienced a student that you taught, especially if you've been in the business, double digits in terms of years? You've seen a student that you taught years ago, and the student walks up to you and says, and I've had it happen to me many times. I'm very grateful for it. hey, Mr. Wright, do you remember back in 2005 you taught this lesson? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't necessarily know if I remember that. But this student remembers it. Why? Because it was an experience. It was a memory for them. And whatever it is that we did within that lesson, whether it was funny, whether it was an aha moment, an epiphany for them, whatever it was, it created a memory. And there was true passion for learning. How many of you know that when a student has true passion for learning, that's real, that's authentic? You can't manufacture that, right? I could stay on this all day. Let me go ahead and keep going because there's so much other stuff that I want to share with you guys. Really neat stuff. Great, 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 great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that affirmation, Kay. Yeah. Great, great. Unique topics. Absolutely. This is why, for those of you that are fans of PBL, project-based learning, I used to work at a school that was 100% project-based learning. We did not have one desk in the whole building. It was all collaborative seating. And it was one of the reasons I love that school and that campus was it provided daily opportunities for students to really think about what learning was, right? How many of you know that information is great, but it's the application of the information that really takes it to the next level? So the power of rigor, we've talked a lot about that. I want to go ahead and get on to some other things here so I can share this rich information with you. What does it mean to be reflective, right? Within the context, being reflective. And so I'm just going to share this with you. And of course, there's some information there. You can take a look at it on your screen. But basically this has always been my premise. There can be no authentic growth without reflection. Let me go ahead and say that one again. There can be no authentic growth without reflection. There can be no authentic growth without reflection. And you might say, Vernon, why do you say that, right? That there can be no authentic growth without reflection. One of the reasons I say that simply is this. In order for me to go to the next level, in order for me to take the next steps, and for it to be cohesive and coherent and in line and honoring all of the experiences that I've had before in my life, well, then what do I have to do? I have to stop and think about those experiences, right? So a lot of times we maybe think about quote unquote reflecting or reflections being this really grandiose type of really intricate, complex thing. And it can be that on many deeper levels, right? But sometimes it's just, hey, let me stop and think. What did a year? And I'll give you guys this this tip. When I'm working with clients and I'm coaching clients privately, one of the things that I ask them is this. And I'll ask them, I'll say, what is the date today? And so I'll go ahead and I'll look at my watch right here. The date is June the 20th of 2020, right? And this is what I'll ask them. This is the power of reflections, right? We're talking about reflections as part of the 5 R's. So great to have you guys. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. One of the things I'll ask them is this. If today is June 20 of 2020, where were you and what were you doing? And are you a better person now than you were on June 20 of 2019? Have you made progress, right? What are some things that maybe you were doing on June 20 of 2019 that you said in 2020, I'm not going to do them anymore. I'm going to change. I'm going to go to the next level. So when we take those moments to really stop and to think and say, you know what? I have grown. I have gone to the next level. And I will share this with you. Not only does it apply to students, which is why it's so great to have students really profile their performance over time as part of a portfolio because they see their own growth, right? But as adults, how many times do we say to ourselves, I realized I hadn't even really thought about how much progress I've made. I've just been going along and busy doing what I do every single day, right? So reflection is it's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. Let me stop and check and take a look here at the chat. Yes, finding student interest. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting story. How many of you know that sometimes when it grosses students out, that is the very thing that they want to learn more about, right? Push for students to reflect on their behavior when they are in trouble, but how often do we do this in their learning? Absolutely. And again, this is not the context of it, but I've said this quite often. I think I mentioned it today on Twitter or yesterday, maybe even both days, right? Is a lot of people talk about restorative practices, but when within those restorative practices, whatever those actions are that they feel constitute that term, When do we give students the opportunity to be a part of authentic dialogue, not a monologue where the adult's talking only, but dialogue where the adult and student are both talking and they're not talking at each other, they're sharing with each other. And we're going back in time and we're looking for, and I'm going to share this with you, not the context here, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. We go back in time looking for what? I'm looking for wins. I'm looking for victories. And if you're an adult and maybe you've been struggling with some things, go back and think about, hey, let me go back and search for some victories. And if we did this more often collectively in the profession for students and really shaped student perspectives where they realized and that they were able to recall their own victories, students would be able to go ahead and say to themselves, hey, this is not who I am, right? I want to tell you about real quick about the power of identity, right? And reflections. I remember I was an administrative intern at a high school campus, and I came around the corner one day. I'm part of the administration team, but I'm an intern, so I'm trying to go ahead and learn the ropes of being an administrator. And I saw two students that were getting ready to fight each other. There were two students that had transferred in. They had been at the school for maybe a week. And one of my students, she walked around the corner, right? And she looked at both of the young men and she asked them, she said, "What are you doing?" And they both said to her, "I'm getting ready to, do whatever it is I'm getting ready to do to him. We're going to fight. I'm angry. I'm upset at him for whatever it is," right? And this is the power of reflection and the power of knowing who you are and the power of identity. And not only as an individual, but as a school. She turned and looked at both students and she said, "We don't do that here. We don't fight here." And the students behind her said, "We don't fight here. That's not how we solve problems at this campus." And I will tell you something, folks. I have seen in different roles, teacher leader, campus administrator, district level support. I've seen a lot of fights in my day, and I've stopped quite a few in my day with other teachers and sometimes with school resource officers. But I will tell you this, that is the quickest fight that I've seen that ended without any physicality whatsoever. None. The power of identity and understanding. And it caused those students that were getting ready to fight, it caused them to reflect on what they were doing. Reflections, absolutely powerful. So we'll go and we'll skip that because really we've talked about that already, the power of reflections. What does it mean to be refined? I'm going to go ahead and tell you this simply. Refinement is really this. I'm always looking to make changes. Some people call it making tweaks, right? I like to use the term refinement. And really, it's this constant, never-ending refinement. If you are a student of total quality management, TQM, Six Sigma, other processes of that nature, you may be familiar with a term, there's a Japanese term called Kaizen. And really the concept is really about making these refinements continually. We're always looking for what can we do to make the experience even richer and even better. And it's so exciting because when teachers and educators have autonomy within their practices and what they do, when they're able to ask themselves, hey, what can I do to make this even better? Like it was really, really cool and the students loved it, but what can I do to make this even better? That's powerful because that's not extrinsic motivation. That's intrinsic motivation. And that is absolutely strong. Let me go ahead and take a look at the chat here real quick. Student dialogue where the adult just listens. That is my goal. Absolutely. I love this. And if you are a fan of Avid Strategies, even if you're not a fan of Avid Strategies, or maybe you're not familiar with Avid Strategies, one of the things I absolutely love for that reason, the student dialogue part, is Socratic Seminar. And if you're not familiar with that, maybe that's something you can check out and look at. Socratic Seminar, absolutely love that. The first time that I saw a Socratic Seminar done was by some seventh grade students. I was in campus leadership at a middle school, and it was phenomenal. And I will tell you, it was so powerful. I really said to myself, as a person that was in leadership on that campus, this dialogue and the depth and the complexity of the dialogue they're having with each other within that learning structure of Socratic Seminar is just as rich, or not richer, than I had seen at the time some of the adults and staff on campus have. And so it was absolutely powerful. All right. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to read that title or read that slide, if you would. And I want to go ahead and share this with you and tell you this, folks. I've been around a lot of people over the years that had a lot of different degrees, a lot of people that were very accomplished, and all of that is great. That's awesome. We honor that. We respect that. We give those individuals kudos. But I will tell you, as a real live leadership lesson, positions and titles yield the ordinary or compliance. Influence is what drives people. How many of you know that maybe you've had a student that was a student of yours, and they were in your class, they were a model student, right? In the morning, they went to someone else's class, and it just, for whatever reason, was not working in that other teacher's class. And the other teacher said, you know what, go down to Miss So-and-so's room, and that was your room, or Mr. So-and-so's room, and that was your room. And the student came down to your room, and they were a model student for the rest of the day. I often have asked teachers over the years, what happened when that student walked from one classroom to another, where they went from maybe not having a really great day and they walked down to the other classroom and they had a phenomenal rest of the day. What happened? Did the student change in those few yards and those few feet from one classroom to another? Absolutely not. They didn't. But what they did is they went to an environment where there was influence. And I want to tell you, a lot of people talk about building relationships, and that is key. But the next step beyond building relationships, the next step of understanding is really, how can I develop influence? And you cannot develop influence. And I guess I should tell you right now, it's kind of one of the secrets, right? It's really not a secret. You cannot develop influence without demonstrating the 5 R's. That's a big takeaway. You cannot have influence without demonstrating the 5 R's on a sustained way and in a sustained manner. It's not a one and done, right? It's not like, oh, okay, well, I did the 5 R's Monday and Tuesday, Vernon, so I'm set for the rest of the week. I don't have to think about it anymore. No, because again, remember, the kids are looking to see if you're real. They're looking, although they may not necessarily use the language, they're looking to see, are you a one and done? Right? Are you going to do this today on Monday, and then tomorrow on Tuesday, you're going to go back to however you were? You cannot have influence. So if you've ever asked yourself in your career, Vernon, man, how can I get more influence? 5 R's. 5 R's. Influence. Let me take a look here to chat. Influence, Patsy, great. Safe environment plus empathy. Let me tell you, that's right on point. That's absolutely on point. And even in the context of our current, and I mentioned that at the beginning of our time together, time of sharing, and just thank you guys so much for being here. Love this. You guys have been phenomenal. That in our current context within our nation and the globe, it is so important to have empathy. And empathy is what makes the difference. But guess what? We have to have safe spaces. And we have to have safe environments, not only between adults, but between adults and students. We have to we have to cultivate and nurture, and so that we have that culture where people say, you know what, I can sit down with Vernon and I can be real with Vernon. And Vernon can know it's coming from an authentic place in my heart. That's empathy. That's real empathy, right? See, real empathy, if somebody ever asks you, do you have real empathy? Really, one of the things you should ask yourself, and really ask them if they're saying that they're demonstrating empathy, really is ask them, when you communicate, does the person really feel and know that you're coming from a genuine place in your heart? Because empathy, if somebody's trying to manufacture empathy, how many of you know somebody's probably going to call you on that one? They're probably going to say, you're saying the right words. I just don't necessarily know that you're really meaning what you're saying, right? Let's see here. Look at the chat here real quick. You guys have been phenomenal with the chat. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And, one of the things that's great, and I'm so glad that you shared that in the chat, James, about, how kids are sent from one class to another, and we're talking about building relationships. Sometimes, and I'll share this with you, and I take no credit for it because a mentor shared it with me years ago, and I don't necessarily know if the mentor came up with it or if they got it from somewhere else. But a mentor said to me many years ago, we were in a coaching session, and he said, Vernon, he said, when people think that they know you, they may not necessarily really know you. They may just know the chapter that they came into your life on. And a lot of times I wonder when we're working with students and we're engaged with students and when we're talking to students about different things as part of the learning process, this whole thing called the learning experience, right? How many times do we think we know everything about a student and we don't? And I'll tell you guys a quick story. I was talking, this is back when I was a teacher, I was talking to a student. And at the time I was teaching a sixth grade math lesson. And the student, for whatever reason, just, they just weren't having a great day. And I said, I got another teacher to watch my class real quick because you always want to leave kids in the presence of an adult to make sure everything is cool, right? Never leave kids unattended. And I got a teacher to watch my class. And so I was talking to the student one-on-one because we really don't want to correct in front of other students. That can definitely bring on stigmatization. We don't want to do that. So having this private one-on-one conversation with the student. And I said to the student, I said, you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and call your mom. And the student, and I thought, because that's what you think, in the profession, man. If we're having a problem with the student, man, let's call the parents. Let's get the parents involved. They're stakeholders, right? They taught us that in graduate school. How do we bring stakeholders into the dialogue? And I mentioned that and shared that with the student. And then the student looked at me and the student said, well, that's great. Go ahead and call her. And if you find out where she is, let me know because I haven't seen her for 2 weeks. And folks, I'm going to tell you something. And that's a deep story. I've been in the profession for many moons, and I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't have an answer, folks. And that's why I'm telling you, folks, curriculum and instruction is great. Curriculum is great. Electronic resources are great. Digital resources are great. Tools in the classroom are great. But folks, the true master teachers are master communicators. It doesn't matter whether they're teaching the littles. It doesn't matter whether they're teaching kids that are getting ready to graduate and go to college. Master teachers are master communicators, and that's empathy. That's empathy, folks. And I'm just going to tell you that happened many years ago, and it was in a very impoverished section of an urban city. I'll just kind of go ahead and leave it at that. I really don't want to give any more details, but big urban city, very impoverished section of the city, very high crime. And that was really one of those situations where those kids needed the best. They needed the best. They needed the best resources. They needed the best. They needed the best of everything. If there was really a situation where it was critical, it was there, right? And I didn't have anything for that. I didn't have any response. And I'm going to tell you this. I had my own moment where I had to check my own empathy. Absolutely. All right. So, of course, that quote comes from Vernon, right? I think I know that guy, right? There we go. So I'm going to introduce you guys here in just a few minutes that we have left. One of the things that I really love this. This is a great place to take notes. If you haven't taken notes already, is the big three. So let's go deeper, right? These are big three. These are three big questions. Every leader should be asking those they lead at least once a week, whether that's individually, whether that's in a group team-like format, a staff level type format, what have you. They should be asking everyone they lead these questions once a week. Let's go through the three questions. Number one, what are you working on right now that you're passionate about? Wow. When is the last time that somebody asked you that question as a teacher? When is the last time that whomever your immediate supervisor is, or even the person beyond that, when is the last time that they came up to you and asked you, what are you working on right now that you're passionate about? Right? Think about that one. Number two, why is that meaningful to you and what impact do you think it can have? Wow. There are people, I would tell you over the years when I have used these three questions, coaching clients privately, I've had so many clients at all different levels, right? Some that were educators, some that were in classroom roles as teachers, some that were teacher leaders, campus administrators, district leaders. I've had so many of them over the years say, Vernon, I wish somebody would ask me that. I'm just ready to engage them in dialogue over that. What are you working on right now that you're absolutely passionate about? Number two, why is it meaningful to you? What impact do you think it can have? And number three, what difference do you think it makes as it relates to the school district's vision and mission? Wow. Let me tell you something, folks. If you ever wanted to wake up in the morning and say, I just can't wait to get in my car and get to work, have somebody say to you and ask you, what difference do you think what you're doing is going to make with the school district's overall vision and mission, and even at a campus level too, if you're working at a campus. And I'm telling you, you're not going to have to ask anybody to fire you up. You're going to be fired up. You're going to be excited. You're going to be motivated. You're going to say, man, I'm ready to go. Somebody go ahead and put me in front of some kids so I can teach them right now. What are you working on that you're passionate about? And going back to the first question, one of the reasons I love that is this. Think about this. There are so many people that work on their passion projects. They don't receive any extra pay. They sometimes get up early to work on them. They sometimes go to bed late working on them. They sometimes even, watch this, they sometimes even, right? Watch this. They sometimes even do this on the weekends. So guess what? It drives them. And notice I said drives them. If you're familiar with a gentleman named Daniel Pink, he wrote a book called Drive. It's important. If you don't get it, if you don't have it, you need to get it. Absolutely, you need to get it right now. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the next thing, the big three questions, right? All right. Your credibility and experience are essential to establishing trust. Absolutely important. An accurate assessment demonstrates your understanding and competence. Absolutely important. How many of you know that in real time, you need to have an accurate bearing on what's happening? Your ability to connect with, value, and shine the light on others leads to the buy-in for the extraordinary. Let me go ahead and tell you this, folks. He is a superintendent now, but years ago, I was sitting next to a leader, and he was addressing some other leaders, some of them aspiring leaders, right? They had just begun their leadership careers. And he said this, he said, don't be so focused on how you can elevate yourself and how you can go ahead and go to the next levels in your career. He says, shine the light on those that help you, and they'll shine the light on you. And I want to go ahead and give you a book recommendation. Want to go ahead and give this to you. If you don't have the book, absolutely check it out. It's one of my favorites from my days in graduate school. The book is called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Plug into it. And if you're in any type of leadership role, which we're all leaders, right? Because we all have influence. And if you have influence, you're a leader, whether you have a title or not. Shine the light on other people. And if you do a great job with that, other people will shine the light on you. You don't have to worry about really, asking the question, how can I go ahead and get buy-in from people, right? All right. So be real, be authentic, EQ, emotional intelligence, be competent, be accurate, emotional intelligence again, be caring, emotional intelligence again. Wish we had more time. Great things there. So now what? What does this look like in my district? What role do I play in this? What's my potential impact as a leader? Ladies and gentlemen, all great next steps for you to think about. The bottom line, the 5 R's: be real, the power of authenticity, be competent, be caring. I remember when I was interviewing for an administrative job one time, and they asked me, they said, Mr. Wright, what 3 adjectives would you use to describe yourself? I said, I'm real, competent, and caring. Let's talk about it, right? Understanding what real EQ, emotional intelligence is. Emotional intelligence is really understanding where people are at that second, at that moment in time. It's not walking around being happy all the time. If somebody tells you that's what emotional intelligence is, you might need to have a conversation with them and kind of shift their paradigm on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. And one more time, thank you. You guys have been phenomenal. You guys have been great. My name is Vernon Wright, as you see there. A picture of the guy there with the bow tie on, at The Right Leader. It has been my pleasure to share and exchange ideas with you. Follow me on Twitter. Go ahead and join the dialogue. If you've not followed me already, would love to have you as a part of the conversation and dialogue over there is in what we call the PLN on Twitter. All of the great sessions, if you're looking for the schedule, go to q.org/Microsoft. If you're looking to watch the session replays, if you'd like to watch this one again, I would be honored. Thank you so much. If you would like to do that, go to q.org/get-a-recording. Do you like that? Get a recording? It's great stuff. You see the hashtags there. If you're going to tweet out about something that you learned here in the session today, something that was impactful to you, would love that. I would be so honored So humbled if you would love to do that and share that with folks. If you do, only thing that I ask for you to do is to do two things for me, right? Just one, two. Number one, tag me on it. Number two, go ahead and put those hashtags at the very bottom down there. Microsoft EDU, hashtag GETA, and hashtag WeAreQ. Would love that if you guys would like to share. That's the power of the PLN. Love that when we're all sharing. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been my honor to be with you guys. I have loved it, have absolutely loved it. You guys are awesome. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me go ahead and stop the recording here just real quick. All right. Thank you guys so much. Okay.